What the diorama talks about is sailing blocks up and down the Nile. That's it. It takes it towards what, in the vernacular of the time, what the pyramid might have been called, or the work site of the pyramid. But it really doesn't mention anything about the pyramid at all. It doesn't talk about putting blocks onto the pyramid. It
No
says
ramps, no nothing.
nothing. All it says is, on today we transported X amount of blocks up the Nile.
Here today, I'm excited here to have Eric Graziano. Is that how I pronounce it?
That's correct.
Owner and writer for ancienthistoryx.com and Ancient Hypothesis on X. And he's here because I want to believe in all the fun, fantastical things that we see on YouTube. And, I've been into Graham Hancock for a long time, got a couple of books back there. I enjoy this stuff a lot. I even watch a shitload of Ancient Aliens, and I don't even believe, 99% of what they say on the show. I just think it's fun. But I'm open to hearing everyone's opinions, and I love hearing people come at things from a different lens. Engineering is one of the perfect lenses to look at these ancient structures that I enjoy so much. So thank you, Eric, so much for joining the Multiverse today. How's it going?
It's going great. Pleasure to be with you, Dave. I think this whole thing started off with a post that you had made on your X account, wondering or just posing the question of how can we bring the alternative community together with the quote unquote mainstream, or for lack of a better term, a general umbrella term, the academic community. And even though they will scoff at that term, I don't know what's a better way to put it. They've said to me, well, you're an engineer, so you're academic too. And I just don't really look at it the same way in that framework that they do.
Yeah.
Because, learning a trade or something like that isn't the same as, taking an archaeological course or something like that. Right. Although there are scientific trades in archaeology that get employed, it's the best way that we can describe it. And I think I replied to that, well, that's what I attempt to do. And sometimes it works. I had good communication with some members of the quote unquote academic community. And other times I've faced some pretty good ridicule and slander at the same time. So I would like to bring these communities together. I don't know if it's possible. I didn't realize how toxic that relationship was or was going to be when I first got into this. And in the beginning, I think some of it I indulged in myself, sort of the Hancockian defense mechanism, the challenging of certain things. And I learned pretty quickly that that was not something that really sat well with me. And I think I had made my bones with that, and with the people that I had some interaction with, and tried to move forward from that point. And that was some 3 years ago. So I would like to see it happen. I do it every day with the people who will communicate with me, and the ones that won't, we've gotten in some pretty heated battles as well. So
did you come across that? I think I know the answer to this, but did you come across that from the other side of the aisle?
I did at first, and some of it was, as I said, was through my own volition, challenging them in a way that was, I don't know, confrontational but abrasive, and I learned, like I said, that just wasn't for me. Now,
right,
I've moved on from that, and I've changed the way that I do things from very early on. I think very early on, I had a 10,000-foot cursory view of things, sort of look at an image or look at a site and extrapolate from that mentally what I thought it meant. And I had one of my first successful YouTube videos was on the scoop marks at the quarry at Aswan. And through this sort of 10,000 foot view, I had in my mind come up with the idea that the JED pillar was some type of ultrasonic tool, and ultrasonic machining was responsible for the scoop marks. And not until I was actually challenged by someone who is now pretty prominent in the alternative history community, essentially scolding me that it's impossible for them to have electrical current sufficient to power those tools, did I take a step back, look inside myself, and say, "Hey, what am I promoting? What am I putting out there? Is it factual? Is it truthful?" And after really digging in my heels to the research, I found that my opinion or what I put out there was to the point of almost self-embarrassment. So I learned from that lesson, and I said, "Yeah, I'm never going to do that again." And I actually deleted the video, and I've been on a more of a nose in the books kind of crusade ever since, and that's what's led me to where I currently am today, um, trying to be as fact-based as possible.
Got it. Yeah. It takes a lot to look at yourself in the mirror sometimes. And I think more of that is needed in the community, both sides of, the argument. So I appreciate you sharing that. I really do. Can you tell us about your background in engineering and how that gives you a different sort of lens, how you try to use that lens to view ancient architecture?
Yeah, so I'm a tool design engineer and manufacturing. So primarily my work expertise was plastic injection molds. So we're talking about, you know, machining steel, looking at objects, this in this case for plastic injection, a plastic component in the inverse, creating the negative of that object in a cavity of steel, and then creating the surrounding components that allow a plastic injection machine to supply that negative cavity with plastic and then eject a cooled and ready to go to the market, so to speak, part.
Uh-huh.
But as the years have gone on, I've had to branch into many different fields. My current employment deals with alloys, metallurgy. I get involved in mechanical machining, whether it be to uh, help them fix an old machine or replace an old machine. So gearing, things like that, leverage, any type of thing like that. I and through my field, I learn a lot about metals, alloys, how they're made, how they're cut, what it takes to manipulate steel, the different uh, hardnesses, tensile strength, everything like that. So when I look at ancient history, I use my mindset as an engineer to figure out how something was manufactured if I can. Now, that doesn't mean I can figure out everything. I most certainly cannot.
That's my favorite thing about what you've said so far, even before we started talking, was that like you're not afraid to say that you can't, which some people on both sides will go, "Oh, I definitely know how they did this," or whatever, and that's just crazy
Right.
for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out the best of my ability, and lots of times I get stumped. There's no doubt about it. But that's part of the challenge. That's part of what keeps you going. That's part of, I want to solve mysteries. I think one of the criticisms I'll have of the alternative community is the nonstop promoting of mystery.
Right.
Uh, and I think I understand human nature. I understand human nature is more, it's more titillating to indulge in the unknown. And at some point, it becomes sort of this reverse psychology where you don't really want to know the answer.
Right.
Uh, Yeah, and my whole thing is no, I want to know the answer. That's why I'm trying to do this. I want to know How?
The answer is disappointing, right? It could
Sometimes,
be
yeah,
disappointing sometimes.
psychologically it can be. Yes.
Sometimes, yeah, that's funny. That is funny. And so in engineering, tool marking, machining, in a modern perspective, how do you frame that into a like, ancient Maya or ancient Egypt? How do you try to like? Do you look at anthropological studies, read articles like that, or how do you?
Well, the first things that I do is I try to understand the tools.
Okay.
So as an engineer, I understand that everything is made with a tool. So the first thing you got to do is try to find the tools or figure out the tools.
Mm-hmm.
So within the context of whatever culture it is, you need to become versed in what they had for tools, what they had at their fingertips, what could they produce as tools, and then from there you can determine how certain things were made. And also, it's a mindset of looking at an assembly. So in my field, most of the tools that I do are an assembly. So it's a group of components all put together to create something. Now, whether that's the final mold in one case, or a fixture or a jig or something like that, it's an assembly of components, but it's also an assembly of steps. So there's a step-by-step process in how something is made. It starts off as
Mm-hmm.
a whole, it gets manipulated into different shapes and components, how those different shapes and components are produced and then assembled together. So you
But
have to look.
Eric, when I go to IKEA, it just shows up in a box, and that's how it comes. All right, it just
Right, and I have that same kind of a funny joke at work with my general coworkers when something is asked to be made, and there's a little bit of frustration level with maybe the timeline, or the tool room makes something and it's not perfect off the shelf the first time, and I said,
right,
well, we're creating something custom from scratch. So it's not like you went to Walmart and then you bought it and then you bring it home and there it is.
right.
So sometimes it takes tweaking, it takes editing, it takes a little bit of adjustment before you have a successful assembly or component.
Yeah, and I did want to point out too, just that like most people are looking at these things through a lens of they have no fucking idea where anything in their house comes from. They don't know how, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like for example, like the only thing I know about manufacturing, to be honest, is there was that show that would like show how things were made, right?
Right, right,
Or Mike took me to the manufacturing plant that he used to work at. And the thing was like, it was way bigger than I thought it was going to be. And I was like, how much different shit is going on in this thing? He's like, oh, you have no idea. And I'm like, I know. So and I don't mean to like, like I'm a social worker and took a bunch of anthropology classes, and I like to look at these things through an anthropological lens, a human lens, a cultural lens, right? But and I don't want to poop on anyone who like is like looking at it through a different lens, but once you see like large scale manufacturing and how from start to finish, and it really puts things into perspective, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And I think part of the, again, we'll go back to this academic community. They are coming from almost your more similar background.
Yes,
I
correct.
remember growing up, learning about ancient Egypt, and it was all about the people. It was all
Yes.
about the relationships,
The religions,
between,
the
yeah, who was whose father, who was who, how
yeah.
they related, the lineages, and it was almost soap opera. And I
Yes.
was like, okay, that's great. How did they make? I don't know if
How
we
they
can
make
swear
this
on this,
shit.
but how did they make the effing pyramid? Okay, I don't care whose uncle was who, and that's sort of immaterial to me.
Right. Right. So let's go there then. When you were like, were you interested in this stuff, ancient history, these sites, Giza, everything like that when you were a kid?
Yes, I think it must happen to a lot of people. I don't think it's unique.
Sure.
But, first seeing the pyramids was like this, almost like a awe-inspiring wave
Yeah.
that comes over you,
Yep.
and came over me like, wow, and, I'm just talking about television, photographs. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine people who've actually been there. But even that sense of awe, it was like a beacon. It was like a
Hmm.
beacon, and that beacon remained in my subconscious all the way until the 90s. I'm pretty, I'm older than most, younger than some, but in the 90s, when I'd say the Rat Pack of ancient history came around, Graham Hancock and
Robert Schock and
Robert
John Anthony
Shaw and
West and
John Anthony West and all those guys, that's just sort of flooded. At that point is when I started buying all the books, you know, um, and just absorbing all that. And I remember, my favorite. A lot of people talk about Fingerprints of the Gods, but my favorite Graham Hancock book is Heaven's Mirror.
yeah, it's right there.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is.
And that to me even opened up more inside of me, like, wait a minute, there's way more going on here than we possibly can imagine. And so I always had this interest in the back of my mind, but I never really did much with it. Life goes on, and
Mm-hmm.
you do whatever you got to do. And it
Yeah, you got
wasn't
to be an
until about,
adult.
yeah, I too was a fan of Ancient Aliens, even though I don't agree with their
Sure,
ultimate conclusions.
it's
But
fun though.
right, because they're going over all these sites. You get
Yeah, you get to look at them. The music's
right,
cool.
you get the preamble, you get to see it all, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, and it's all the things that I read about. So I watched that show for a long time, but only after, I don't know how many seasons it was on, I did begin to grow leery of the ultimate conclusion of aliens.
Right.
And I also, at some level, got a little frustrated with it, especially becoming older, gaining more knowledge within my field, and your mind matures and things like that. And I said to myself, and I bet I can do a better job presenting these sites than that television show. And so I said, let me go ahead and give it a crack at it. And I started the X channel, and it went from there.
Yeah, and then you have a website that you put articles on. I'm going to pull it up right now just so we can have a look at it. But when did this start?
So this started a little over a year ago. Um, the reason this came about was,
That is not working. Just give me 1 second.
no worries.
I'm going to make it time. I don't know what that looks. That normally doesn't do that.
Okay.
18.
Turn off your ad blocker, or turn on your ad blocker.
Oh, maybe. I don't know if I have one on this computer though. Let's try. 1 sec. What if history isn't linear? What if civilizations rise and fall again and again? Discover the shocking truth in Deja Vu. Has Everything Already Been? By my friend Alexander Cheshkovich. Grab your copy now on Amazon. The link is in the description below. And subscribe to Dave's Multiverse on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble today so you don't miss a thing. Remove. Okay. Oops. Replace screen sharing. Ancient History X. Is that working?
I don't see anything except for you, Dave.
Well, I'll put a link and everything like that. So you started the website last year.
Yeah, a little bit around a year ago, approximately. The reason for the website was I began to realize that X maybe was not the best venue for in-depth
It's the worst.
presentations of things.
I love all my friends on X, but yeah, you can't have a good discussion on there.
It's not necessarily even the discussion, and I don't disagree with you. It's that putting out in-depth content,
Yeah.
was it wasn't the venue. And I don't own, a lot of people act like they own their X channel. You know, Elon owns your X channel. You don't
Right.
own your X channel. And I also found out that they only save like your last, I forget what it is, like 1,200 posts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're aware of that.
I
Then
did
they
not know.
archive everything onto a server. So if
I
you
didn't know
want to
that.
get, yeah, if you want to get posts from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, unless you've bookmarked it or pinned it as a highlight, it gets archived, and you have to request through
Huh.
X support for an encrypted download of all of your old posts.
Wow. So if it was something you put a bunch of effort and work into, it's gone. And
Pretty much,
Elon owns it.
pretty much. And so I wanted to have something that was under my control. I also was in a period of my life where I couldn't make videos anymore. I don't have a very successful YouTube channel. I have a small YouTube channel, a little over 600 subs. I'm working on it now again, now that changes have occurred in my life that allow me to. But I also at the time was unable to make videos, and competing against some of the heavyweights was also difficult. It's hard to make your mark. There's people out there like ancient architects who just absolutely kill it. I don't think there's anyone better than Matt Simpson. I don't think there's any way that you're going to do better than him. I talk to him infrequently, and I just tell him, hey, I was just about to do a research topic, and I found out you already did it. He's incredible. So I thought, maybe this is more of the venue for me. We had a team at first. I had an ideological view of how this would go, to have a team of writers. It's down to me and history content, who also posts articles on the website. So, right now it's a two-man team that writes for the site. But yeah, it's basically a place where you can take in-depth research and it's not going to go anywhere. You own it, and it's there for posterity. And I actually can use it as a reservoir for things that I want to go back to, because there's hyperlinks in
Mm.
there for papers and anything that you want to pull up. So I go, oh yeah, I know where that paper is. It's in this article for whatever, and I can go back and look. So it acts as a repository as well for saving accumulative data that you've gathered.
Got it. Yeah, I was just looking at it earlier, and there's a wide variety of topics on here, which is cool. Ancient whalers of Brazil, assessing maritime capability. That's a rabbit hole for me, so I'm looking forward to digging in there. We'll put the links below. Have you ever been to any of these like sites, even like in Mexico, Peru, anywhere that near us?
No, I have not, and it's something I ideally would like to do. I have a young son,
Hmm.
so traveling is difficult. So I would like to ideally do that, but no, I am a voyeur of these sites. My research is online through publications.
Hmm.
Any type of paper that's been published, old books, um, you know, what they used to call memoirs from the people from the early 19th century. I go
Hmm.
back to 18th century books.
Hmm.
Archive.org is a remarkable repository of information.
Hmm.
Academia EDU is wonderful because people put their published work on there freely without a paywall. Wherever I can find technical data from researchers, I use that as the backbone of what I do. And then I take from what they've done and I put my own lens on it where it's applicable.
Got it. Yeah. The only reason I ask is because I haven't been to too many myself, just in Mexico. But it just, if you're, for the kid in you, I highly recommend even a trip down to Cancun or something.
I have been in talks with a particular individual about, and I won't say anything yet, but I would like to work with that person and go to some on location sites. So it is something that I have on my radar.
Is there any like if you had a top 3 sites, like if I was like magic and I could like let you go there this weekend, where would you want to go?
Well, obviously Giza. I mean,
Yeah,
Giza is the penultimate place,
sure.
the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, all that. You got the Khafre, the Menkaure, and all the, the three pyramids sitting right there. I mean, I don't think you can really beat that, and then the ancillary sites, around Egypt. I don't think there's anything better than ancient Egypt. They're the greatest ancient culture, in my opinion. But the Norte Chico pyramids in South America are also amazing. They were timeline contemporary with the pyramids of Egypt. So you had people building pyramids basically essentially across the globe at the same time that the ancient Egyptians were. I see some correlations with the Norte Chico culture, with the Chaco Canyon cultures, the Chacoans as they're called.
Hmm.
They have these kivas. I think there's some kind of link there that I would like to explore further. So if I travel in the Americas, I think I would want to go to those two places, and then work on postulating how even within the Americas between New Mexico and South America, which is a
It's pretty
large
far.
distance, you have these architectural constructed ruins that are virtually identical, and there's no association known in the historical record in any capacity for why these things would be so similar. And then obviously, I think the Tas Tepler region
Hmm.
is vast. And one of my things with that is I try as much as and as popular as Göbekli Tepe is, it's only one node in a vast 200-kilometer region of T pillars and ancient ruins.
Hmm.
So a lot of people know about Karen Tepe, um, and there's Novelli Quarry, which is now submerged. You can't even see it; it's underwater. But there's other Tas Tepler or Stone Hill sites that have T pillars. Um, you know,
Yeah,
when it
there's a few
comes to,
dozen or something, isn't there? I'm gonna look it up right now.
yeah,
But
there's about a dozen of T pillar, and then there's other sites that are in the region that are more mound like, but they don't have T pillars. But in my view, this is a lost. That's the lost civilization that we're looking for. I've written several articles on this. I did a video on it recently. I look at that whole region holistically. The academic community looks at each one as sort of a pop-up node where it popped up here, then it popped up there, then it popped up there. They don't really connect them to any broader or greater,
like civilization,
yeah, or
that sounds so silly to
cohesive
me.
system.
There's 12 sites. I just looked it up with a T pillars plus all these other different sites. So whatever the dozens of other different sites, but whatever the T pillar sites before. Um, Obviously, some kind of civilization we don't quite understand. Maybe a hybrid of hunter gatherer versus domesticated farming. I don't know, but what are
Well,
your thoughts on that?
I can get into that a little bit because this is something that I've worked on a little bit more than other places. So
Okay.
not only do you have the architectural connections, there have been other signs to me that indicate a cohesive system. So for a long time, the temple idea was put forth for Göbekli Tepe. It turns out that there are residential dwellings that surround all the enclosures. This was, I will say, kind of kept quiet on Lee Clare's blog. He had this stuff on his blog for many years before it really hit. I think it really hit like last year, the dwellings. He was aware of it for much longer than that. Novelli Quarry, which was excavated before it was submerged in the 90s and late 80s, also had dwellings. So you have these structures with residential communities. They have found enough evidence to show that they were processing wild grains. So there's grinding tools and everything that involved to manipulate wild grains in order to create breads, I would assume. So they weren't planting crops, but they were harvesting local wild crops and they were processing that for food. We have at least two sites that they have determined where metallurgy was taking place. One of them was just found about a year ago, where they found some slag that was remnant of making brass. So you have metallurgy, you have processing grains, you have residential buildings, you have whatever you want to call them, ceremonial buildings or however, I try to stay away from that temple moniker.
Same.
But to me, this is the hallmarks of a civilization or proto-civilization, or how I would like to say it is redefining what civilization means. Because according to what is the marker for civilization is domestication of animals and growing crops. So we have all these animal motifs. We don't know, I don't know how much they found in lieu of actual animal bones and things like that. But obviously, nature in itself, the animals in their surrounding environment were important to them. To what end they were working that into their communities is uncertain. I think the main conjecture is that each one of these animals represented a clan or a group, but maybe it's more than that. So do we really need to say that a large group of people with similar architecture that's producing metal tools, that's processing grain, that's building dwellings, that has community centers, why wouldn't that be a civilization? Yeah, they weren't growing crops, they weren't planting seeds, they weren't domesticating a wild animal for herds, but that obviously came later. So maybe we need to redefine what a civilization is.
I like that, because civilization, when I think about hominids or humans and human related humans and stuff like that existing for however long they did, um, there was likely like large groups that maybe existed that didn't build large structures too, but that could still be a civilization as well, right? I guess it just depends on, like you said, how you define a civilization. So you said that the Taz-Templar region and the people there are the quote lost civilization that people are always talking about. People like to use the dating of Göbekli Tepe specifically as sort of the see, we told you, it's a lost ancient civilization. You said it couldn't possibly be older than whatever, but see, now it is. Do you look at it that way, as like a smoking gun of a lost ancient civilization, or what?
Well, you know, my mindset is one where I take certain concepts with a grain of salt. Uh, I don't really get my backup with sort of the known paradigm and use it as a pinata to hit. Like I understand why people do that. Um, there's a lot of conspiracy theory type mentality built into that type of mindset. I honestly really don't care what quote unquote they say. Like, is it a smoking gun? Does it prove? Well, it proves something that they didn't think was possible. There's no doubt about it. But I don't get my sort of backup about that. I'm more enthralled with the fact that they found it, that it's there. What does it
Yeah.
mean? Than
Hmm.
I am to say, "Ha ha! Look, you were all wrong." Like that's wasted energy to me.
Yeah, I can see that perspective, and I it is often looked at as like vindication for Graham Hancock and Robert Schoch and all
And
these
that's fine.
guys. And I sometimes I could see why it's framed that way. And I wonder, because the further back in time you go, is like once you get to like that far back, you're really in like super speculation territory, right? And so to say that that is connected to global sites that are equally as complex or more complex all around the world and yada yada is a smoking gun, I don't do that. But it does push, what we thought humans were capable of back double, almost twice, actually double, about double.
No, you're right. And again, but this is under the framework of what they say.
They say, yeah, what
I'm a
book
Gen
they
Xer. I don't give a crap what they say.
say. Good.
And so yeah, it honestly, like, with the attitude that I have, it did not surprise me as much. It was super cool that they found it,
Mm-hmm.
and it did cause things to change and be revised. But
Mm-hmm.
that to me is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I look forward to the next one that's found and where that's going to be, because
Yes.
there has to be another one, and that's what the excitement about. That's what the thrill of this is about. Is where is the next Tastepler region going to be, and what is it?
Yeah, and we just don't know because we haven't dug up like jack shit compared to like what's available to dig up, and with I wanted to ask you about this, how the human brain capacity gets pushed back every 5 or 10 years, it seems like lately. And like, if you consider that catastrophism and gradualism can exist at the same time, um it's possible that, in my view, that like civilizations can pop, like rise and then fall, and then we inherit the remnants. I just it's hard for me to make any like bold claims about like connecting them all like I'm an episode of Ancient Aliens or something. Like I said, I want to, I just don't. And I like that that's sort of your goal is to, you mentioned earlier, maybe this was before we went online, but you mentioned earlier going like going from what we know and the evidence and the current paradigm and working from there rather than being outside the paradigm and poking holes in it. And I think that's because you talked about the leap of faith thing, right? It's like you got to take a leap of faith one way or the other. You got to do the same thing kind of with spirituality. But I like how the conservative approach. Would you consider your approach conservative?
Yeah, I would say so. I probably, as I get older, just in general, I become more conservative, and it also goes back to something I think we said before we went on about making mistakes in the beginning,
Yes.
making mistakes, being so far outside of the box that I'm, in my own opinion, I made a fool out of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to do that anymore, and I can face the slings and arrows from either side, and I do get it from both sides without any second guessing or anything, because I know what I'm looking at is factual. But to answer your questions that you put forward, those are very good questions, and I'll try my best to answer that. So, according to anthropological studies, which is more aligned with your background, um, the human brain was fully developed, and they've determined this from cave paintings. So the Homo sapien cave paintings, which probably were learned from Neanderthals, um, they display, according to anthropological studies of the mind, a fully developed human brain. So we're talking a fully developed human brain 200 to 300,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the human mind has been the same as ours, fully developed for that long. Now, how we extracted the natural world and things around us was a slow crawl till we got to our point where we are today.
I would agree.
Now, the idea of all these connecting things, right? This is a great question, right? diffusion. Ancient history, alternative people like to talk about. There had to be a single source that transferred all this knowledge from one end of the globe to the other end of the globe.
Yeah, versus
And
independent, you know, through across space and time, developing these technologies and ideas.
right, and that's a profound question, and that's something I've been entertaining myself recently. So, for example, a photogrammetry scan of the Rapa Nui quarry just came out.
Yeah, I
It's
saw
a
that.
remarkable piece of technological advancement and achievement
Yeah.
to be able to scan that entire quarry, and you can look at it from a God's eye view all the way down to within a few feet. And one of the first things I noticed was the similarities in stonemasonry and extracting the blocks of, that became the moai, or extracting the moai from the volcanic tuff. You see the same technology all around the globe when it comes to stonemasonry. So the question is, and they're separated by millennia of years.
Right. Right. Like stuff in Cambodia versus stuff in Egypt and stuff like that.
Yeah, so like, the unfinished obelisk at Aswan, it has this rib underneath. We've all seen it. And the moai have this same rib. So they're
Mhm.
working the stone around the moai until there's a center rib under the moai, the same exact way that they worked the stone around the unfinished obelisk and left that rib. So here we have a stonemasonry technique separated by thousands of years by supposedly, and I can't disagree, totally disconnected people. There's no
Mhm.
way the indigenous people of Rapa Nui knew anything about ancient Egyptians from 3,000 years ago. There's no way. So this brings up the point of a linear progression of the human mind, that
Hmm.
somehow we're programmed to develop very similar, if not identical, modes of
Mm.
functioning and operating independently from one another. And that's a fascinating thing about human nature. So it's not necessarily sort of the Graham Hancockian mode, which is some destroyed, lost civilization had advanced knowledge, and all the people, certain amount of people of that civilization were scattered to the wind, and they arrived at all these different shores, and they brought this knowledge to each individual and then handed it down somehow. Now, there's lots of stories that are like that. There's lots of oral traditions that are like that, and I don't discount those at all. But when they're separated by 3,000 years, I don't know that oral history would be kept all the way to that point. Now, some would argue, well, that means that the Moai are much older and this kind of thing, but the facts just don't support that.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is they would say that all those sites are connected by an ancient lost civilization, and that it had nothing. The people who lived in Rapa Nui at the same time as Egypt had not it went in Giza, like, had nothing to do with each other 4,000 years ago, but they did maybe 12,500 years ago or something.
Right, and it's a fascinating topic, and I don't begrudge anyone who wants to think like that, because after all, this should be
It
exciting.
sounds like it's fun, man.
Yeah, absolutely. This should be exciting. It should titillate your mind. It should make you think. I think one of the greatest gifts that the alternative community has done for humanity is make people think.
Yeah.
So many people don't think. Now,
Yeah.
people can go a little bit overboard with that and into a realm of sort of not healthy, unrealistic fantasy.
No, people don't do that.
But at the same time, for the vast majority of rational, normal human beings,
Yeah.
this has been very healthy thing to trigger the subconscious, to make you look at the world differently, to make you think about things differently. And then it's up to the individual then what they do with that sort of excitement and internal drive to pursue things further.
Yeah, it makes people interested in learning, and I want to differentiate between learning and academia, because it's a big difference between you know doing the work for 8 years or whatever versus like just indulging yourself and going down whatever but there's so many people. I hear this all the time. Like, yeah, I hated school. History sucked. History class sucked. I liked history class, but but now that because of Graham Hancock or because of stuff like this, now I'm interested in it, and because it is packaged as a mystery and as a exciting, and what could be like the possibilities, like it really opens the door wide open. But today we're going to stay we're going to try our best to stay within the paradigm of evidence that we have, established evidence of human civilization. And I wanted to talk about a couple of sites with you today. And you mentioned one already was your number one site. So let's talk about Giza, because some of the things I want to ask you about are like the old the math doesn't check out, the years versus the material versus the transportation of the blocks and yada yada yada, and the there's no carvings. This was literally happening on X today. Jimmy Corsetti and somebody else, and going back and forth about how there's no hieroglyphs depicting the building of the pyramids, right? And so I see it easy for somebody to like who hasn't seen all the evidence to go, yeah, maybe it was somebody else. Maybe the dynastic Egyptians did find this stuff. And oh, what about what do they call that? Zos Zep Tepi the first time before, like it supposedly goes down past 60,000 years or something like that. Anyway,
Right.
what do you say, what do you do with all that when given the evidence that we actually do have in your engineering background?
Right.
What is your perception of how they built that shit, of the pyramids of Giza? Because like they're wild, man. Like
There's no
if they
doubt
built
about
them back then 4,000 years ago with those tools, I mean, man, I would, if I could go anywhere, Eric, that'd be it. Like at any time, like that, if that would be like I wouldn't even have to think. That would be the number one place I'd go if I had a time machine.
Totally agree. Yeah, I happened upon that conversation as well. This started with that whole thing kicked off with Michael Button, who
Yes,
put
correct.
out a post who said, let's face it, we have no idea how the pyramids were built. And he got a lot of snarky replies. And the main thing that Jimmy was responding to was people saying, oh, the Diary of Mur. The Diary of Mur says how the pyramids were built. And you can ask even some of the people I've had conflict with in the online academic community will say the same thing. Well, I hate to break it to them, but we are all not living outside of these impervious walls anymore. We have a technologically savvy, sophisticated society now where people can look and learn things on their own. They don't need to go into the walls of academia to be educated about it. We can look ourselves. And there is the penultimate paper written about the Diary of Mur has its complete and full translation. I, in fact, am going to be writing an article on that next for my website. I already have the draft. I started it a while ago, but I got distracted and didn't stop or didn't finish. But now, since this has become topic of du jour over the last 24 hours, I'm going to be publishing that article within the
Nice.
next 24 hours. There's absolutely nothing in the Diary of Mur that talks about how the pyramids were built at all. And
Nothing.
uh,
Well, what were they saying
zero.
was? Why would they even say that?
I don't know why they say it, and it's really like a big fat L that they take every
Yeah.
time they lean on it, and
Yeah.
it's almost embarrassing. And that's one of the reasons why I want to publish the article. What the Diary of Mur talks about is sailing blocks up and down the Nile. That's it.
Hmm.
That's it. It doesn't say. It says it takes it towards what, in the vernacular of the time, what the pyramid might have been called, or the work site of the pyramid. but it really doesn't mention anything about the pyramid at all. It doesn't talk about putting blocks onto the pyramid. It
No
says
ramps, no nothing.
nothing. All it says is, on today we transported X amount of blocks up the Nile. Then
They say how big the blocks were, how far they transported them, what was the barge made of, how big was the damn barge? Like,
no,
those
they
are
don't
good
say how big the barge was. It's very pragmatic. It's literally a logbook.
Yeah, right.
And you're putting entries into a logbook of the work that was being done in that day.
Got
It
it.
says the direction it went in. It doesn't say how large the boats were. It's really a lot of nothing. It's very disappointing, quite frankly, because I actually wanted to believe um, that there was something more there than there was. And when I
Well,
read it, I was like,
these Stanford guys are saying it, Eric.
yeah, it's a nothing burger. It really is.
Yeah.
I think Talit is the French archaeologist who deciphered it and wrote a paper on it. He infers so much from it that is totally conjecture. He infers a quantity of blocks when nowhere in there does it say a quantity of blocks. There's so much inference made from it. I'm actually astounded that it keeps being referred to. And like I said,
When did he do that?
What's that?
When
Oh,
did like
Talit.
yeah.
I think I'd have to look. I'm not. It's relatively new. The full translation from Talit. He
Okay.
wrote a book
I,
on it.
I assumed it was going to be older because sometimes something old just gets thrown in there and like untested forever until somebody's like, hey, like 40 years later or whatever. So, one person translated it. But so you're saying it's a relatively new translation.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, and this paper and this translation and this deciphering of what the Diary of Mur says is considered the best one ever made.
Hmm.
And I went there like, wow, I'm going to see something here. This is great. And I just was totally like, wow, there's nothing here.
Well, that's kind of the complaint the alts have about, some of the true mysteries in Egypt and other places is they just kind of get, I don't know, they just kind of explain it simply and then walk away. And then I, 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 I can see why people are like going, hey, come on now, and there's a bunch of examples like that. Giza, there's a bunch like and so part of my question was like, in your opinion, and you mentioned a French guy, a French archaeologist that's who you were taking your inspiration
He's an
from, but
architect. So I
architect.
think the
Yeah.
best way to answer that
Is there a documentary with him in it that's like
there was like a Discovery Channel show and some books made in the 2000s. He first published a
what's his
paper
name?
in 2008, Jean Pierre Houdin.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really not talked about by alternative community researchers enough. And he's definitely not talked about by the Egyptologists. He's sort of like this odd man out. And I feel like I'm one of his most vocal champions because what he's put together is the most concise and fact-based reconstruction of how the Great Pyramid was built I ever seen. It answers, I think, 90% of the questions on the construction compared to anything. It's the best thing that's ever been done to solve how the Great Pyramid was made. Now, to address your question, I'll put it this way. You're absolutely right. The academic community goes just simply like makes these blanket statements. They say, we know how it was done.
It's in my book.
That's it. And that's all they have. Then they don't have anything else after that. And
for some of the stuff, yeah.
Especially the Great Pyramid. You know, they'll raise their fist. They say they know how it's done. They'll point to the Diary of Mur. They point to like a handful of things. I don't even know if it's because they don't come from a construction engineering background and they're just kind of just high on their own supply that they think they can just say things and that's the end of it. I really don't know. But to get into the more of the details of it, you have to be, the way I look at it is like a forensic investigator solving a murder. We've all seen these forensic shows where they gather all this evidence and they use the evidence to piece together a picture in your mind how something was done. So there's a lot of misnomers out there about what the ancient Egyptians did for tooling, how they transported blocks and this and that. You have to take different vectors of evidence and then assemble them together to create the larger picture.
Yeah, from different disciplines. It has to be multidisciplinary.
Multidisciplinary and multi-source based research. Okay. And you cobble all this together to paint a picture.
Multi-source based. So like that's like when you mentioned before, you look at modern stuff and old books as well, kind of thing.
Right. And I look at any source I can find. So, for example, the transporting of blocks. The transporting of blocks was done by barge on the Nile. They were not dragging blocks all the way from the quarries on land all the way to whether it be Giza or wherever else. If you look at the quarry at Aswan and some of the other quarries, they are on one end of the Nile and the Giza is on the other end of the Nile. They used, they dug out channels off of the Nile and they would create a sluice gate, basically like you see today when a ship has to elevate and travel over high ground. They have these water gates that rise the water up and the ship goes up and then they drain it and then they move the ship along. Or that's basically, or to go underneath a bridge or something like that. Instead of having the bridge lift up, they'll lower the level of the water so that they'll separate all the water, lower the level of water that the ship is in, and then it makes it under the bridge and then raise the ship up so it can keep going. These are found in old archaeological books and papers from Egyptologists from the early 19th century and things like that. It's been further elaborated on by satellite scans, which show that the Nile had a more westward track back around the time of the pyramids. It's slowly, gradually moving east further away. So there's much more dry land in between the Nile and where the pyramids are. But the original path of the Nile was much more westward, almost as if the pyramids were like a lakeshore property. So they would dig these channels off of the Nile and have the earth separating it. Once the channel was deep enough, they would remove the earth, put in a sluice gate. The water would flood in, and they could bring a ship closer to the quarry. So blocks were extracted from the quarry, moved a short distance on a sled, not a long distance, and then put on top of this barge. They would lower the deck of the ship until it was ground level with the earth. And that way they could just literally slide the block on the sled onto the ship. And then they would open the sluice gate and bring more water in, and the boat would then rise and lift the block off of the land. And then they would sail it down to the Nile, and then they would do the reverse. They would bring the ship into another canal with a sluice gate. They would drain the water, and the ship would lower its level so that the deck was at the level of the land. They would bring the ship off, load it onto a sled, and then bring it up to the work site. So what John Pierre, so that's how they transported massive heavy stones long distance.
I only chuckled to myself because that's not that complicated.
No, it isn't. Right.
I had a laugh because like you want to attribute all these like complicated processes when sometimes simple ingenuity is the answer.
Absolutely.
Because
so from there, Jean Pierre Houdin basically, through the study of the pyramids, reverse engineered how it was made. It's a complex system of ramps and counterweights. So right now we have the Grand Causeway, which people just think is sort of like a visual thing. Well, the Grand Causeway, according to Jean Pierre Houdin, was a massive ramp that pulled up blocks from one of these channels off of the Nile to pull heavy blocks up towards the Great Pyramid site. And I forget if it's Khafre's pyramid to the left, right, and Menkaura's to the right. To the right, there was a precipitous pit dug, a ramp in the other direction where a counterweight sled was placed that they would load heavy blocks on. I have a couple videos. That is an image of his internal ramp theory. But there is a long video that he made. He modeled this all in CATIA software, and then Dassault Systems created a whole animation of it. I have like a 20-minute long video from Dassault Systems. I've posted it a few times on my channel. But essentially, it was a sled loaded with blocks and a rope and pulley system that pulled up the blocks, not with manpower, up to the work site to get the heavy blocks of granite off of the ships up close to the pyramid level. So then there was an external ramp that only went to course that was ever increasing. So each row of blocks is called a course. So they had a local quarry on site where they were extracting limestone to build the ramp. And the ramp kept increasing. So they would bring the blocks up the ramp all the way up until course 43. And that's how they laid the exterior casing stones, and then inside of that, the filler blocks were put in. It's hard to explain verbally. You have to see it. Then there's a series of spiraling internal ramps that he has found some evidence of with what's called Bob's niche. There is a little chunk out of the corner of the Great Pyramid that's visible. And early in the 80s, a Japanese team did a photogrammetry scan, or no, was it photogrammetry? No, it wasn't photogrammetry. It was a muon. It was some type of scale. Forgive me if I don't know the name right now. But they found evidence of internal voids that look like a spiral going around the inside. And he correlated that with the niche. So you have an internal spiral ramp that's just inside the outside. You have an exterior ramp that goes to level 43. And then you have other ramps that were used in concert with the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is the linchpin, as I've said, of this entire theory. The Grand Gallery itself was a mechanism for the counterweight. So it wasn't for any aesthetic purpose. It was totally structural. So if you look at the Grand Gallery, there are these benches, what's called benches, all along the sides. And there are these rectangular cutouts on the benches that go inside of them. He envisioned that wooden beams with notches on them were placed into those rectangular cutouts and sat on the bench. And there was a wooden framed counterweight sled that rode up and down the Grand Gallery, and ropes came up through the top, exited, and then came back down a ramp that was actually inside the pyramid to bring blocks up as they built up the King's Chamber. So it's a series of counterweights, ramps. It's a whole concert of multiple processes to eventually build the Great Pyramid.
No, you did a good job explaining. I've seen a documentary talking about that. I've seen a documentary with him in it talking about that. Right after you explained that all, we pulled up this from your X, and it's an example of how Jean Pierre Houdin's ramp system worked. Is that what we're about to see?
Yeah, so this would be the ramp that pulled the blocks up from the channels where the boats delivered the blocks from the quarries. And the red indicates the ramp, and this is what we see today as the causeway. And here in this area here is where they were quarrying limestone to build this external ramp. And this here is indication of the internal spiral ramp. So you have multiple things going on at the same time. And if we go further along here, you'll see that there are ropes assisting in pulling up the blocks which are on sleds. And that goes to a counterweight channel, which is over here. This is the external ramp. They're building that up with the courses. And these are the local limestone blocks that they're quarrying on site, which will later be used for the top third of the pyramid. So let's see if I can go to.
Yeah. And
so here they're going to get into the.
You always hear Graham Hancock's quote, it must have been a pretty big fucking ramp. And this was a pretty big ramp, right? Like,
yeah. So let me scrub. Here is the counterweight ramp on the opposite side of the causeway ramp. And this now is hidden under the Khafre pyramid.
Okay.
So right here is your counterweight drop. Right now the pyramid is sitting on top of this. And here we have wooden supports and logs that the ropes are going under, and that went down to this counterweight sled. So this acts like a ballast that goes up and down and pulls the blocks up.
Huh.
And then they would stop here, and then they would work their way up on this external ramp. Here is the causeway as it exists now.
Yeah.
And this is inside underneath the pyramid where the counterweight ramp is now hidden. So then it gets transferred to the counterweight system that was worked with the Grand Gallery. So this right here was another counterweight system.
I always thought just intuitively.
So right here is your counterweight sled, and now you're pulling the blocks up the ramp with the assistance of this counterweight.
I always just thought the Grand Gallery looked like a counterweight system to me as well. But it's a chemical manufacturing plant, Eric.
Yeah. I know where that comes from. I mean, I urge people to go and look at this video. It's 23 minutes long. It's going to be hard to, just kind of run it here for the stream.
But we get an idea of what you're talking about, which is good.
Like any of this stuff, there isn't a simple answer, right? And it's hard to verbalize it. It's hard to communicate it in a way that without seeing it all in its totality. I know a lot of people are going to laugh at this segment and say I look like an idiot because I didn't show anything. Look at the video, please.
I'll edit it in a way that it won't, but I don't think so. I've seen a similar demonstration on a documentary with that guy, and you guys can go look at it yourself, John Pierre Houdin. And it's the thing is though is it is a lot more that is simpler. I don't know if that's the right word, than taking the leap of faith of saying that it was global connected civilization that lived 12,500 years ago before the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis that was connected and had ancient lost civilization. I mean, that because of the vast stretch of time difference, and how far back like you have to go, it just makes it so that you have to make way too many assumptions and way too much speculation. Something like that is people are going to be mad at me for saying this, but something like that is far less speculation than all the shit I just said. And I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's practical.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way of putting it. It's practical.
Yeah. And, you had to be practical with the kind of stuff that they had, right? I mean, the tools that they had and the resources and stuff like that. And what are your thoughts on like recent stuff going on there, like the Void and Matt Bell, like starting a project, and I don't know what's even going on there. And as well as like you've got Project Unity climbing under, they're talking about whole systems of tunnels and shit down there that go for miles and miles and miles. What are your thoughts on like new discoveries in the area as well as the SAR scans?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm very excited about the project that Matt, is it Bale or Beal? I always thought
Bell. It's Bell. I always thought it was
Bell.
Beal
Okay.
too till I talked to him, but it's Bell.
Okay. So I'm very excited about the project that Matt Bell is involved in. I did a video recently making a bold prediction of what they're going to find, and it's based on John Pierre Houdin's research. So you can look on my X channel and on Matt Simpson's X channel. We both have videos, and he was kind enough. I came after him, but I did a little bit different of a video than he did. He was more in depth. Mine was more like, brass tacks. We now, through the lens of time, have all the data on the shafts that go out of the Queen's Chamber, the northern and southern shaft. And what we've learned from those shafts is that they aren't in a linear line from the Queen's Chamber to approximately the exit. They don't really exit. They go to these blind doors, but they make several turns. They turn left and right. And the only logical explanation for that, according to Jean Pierre Houdin, is what he calls the noble circuit. And the noble circuit is what the workers use to exit the King's Chamber once the portcullis blocks were closed and the chamber was sealed. And it was also used to bring in the sarcophagus. The sarcophagus does not fit through the block that currently people use to get into the chamber. It's too large. There is a block that is quote unquote movable, something like out of an old mystery novel, because there's no load bearing weight on it. There's a series of blocks that the load is spread on the blocks that surround this block. This block is directly in line with the sarcophagus, and this block leads to the noble circuit. And according to Jean Pierre Houdin, what the noble circuit is the antechambers that contain Khufu's funerary goods. Every pyramid and every pharaoh's burial had an antechamber where they put the funerary goods, all of the riches and everything he needed for the afterlife. So according to Jean Pierre Houdin, right behind that is the two antechambers for Khufu. So,
woo!
Yeah,
that's gonna be fun.
Now, I will leave a little caveat. That would be the most exciting find.
Yes, it would.
Now,
it really would.
The big void is, I'm not sure exactly where it is, right? The scan pyramid project, they put out animations, they kind of show it and move it around in approximation and different locations. If it's higher than behind the King's Chamber wall, if it's much higher in the pyramid, it could be another grand gallery. It could be a duplicate grand gallery that was used to put the relieving chamber blocks above the King's Chamber. But I'm holding out hope that it is the antechambers which contain Khufu's funerary goods. Now, John Pierre Houdin predicted in 2008 with his reverse engineering that they would find the north face corridor. I don't know if you remember, it was last year, they sent up that orthoscopic camera and they found that room hidden above the main entrance. So that main entrance, that I should say that north face corridor is the entrance to the noble circuit, where they brought in the sarcophagus and brought it to the king's chamber and leads to the antechambers where his funerary goods are. And a reason why I brought up the shafts is when you 3D model the antechambers in the proper locations, the shafts exactly move around these antechambers in this noble circuit. In other words, if the shafts coming out the queen's chamber were linear and straight, they would have punctured right through it. So why else would you make all of these jogs unless it was to avoid other empty spaces, other chambers that are there? So I put on my YouTube video my prediction. It's got more 3D animation. It shows the shafts. It shows where the noble circuit should be. If you want, we can cut to that. It's a little bit easier to present.
Yeah, let's do that.
Essentially, right here is where he predicts the antechambers are.
Okay.
Now, I think they're a little bit higher, and that could account for the big void. But this shows the block. Now, he envisioned a leverage mechanism based on gravity. There was a spacer piece of wood put here, and once that was removed, gravity forced this wall block over into the shaft, and then they used another piece of lumber as a piston to push it in place. But this was the block that was removable that allowed them to get the sarcophagus into the king's chamber. And so it gets into it a little bit here and shows that this right here is what he believes where the antechambers are. These antechambers are modeled after the Red Pyramid. The Red Pyramid has this exact architecture, and he basically just superimposed it into the Great Pyramid. There you can see the shot, and this noble circuit leads right to that north face corridor. So you basically have you have the entrance and the exit hypothetically already proven with the removable block and the nobles and the north face corridor. This is how they first envisioned that they brought the sarcophagus into the chamber. But again, it doesn't fit through this hole. It's not big enough. And that's how everyone gets in there now, because this block has been removed. And then
God, I want to go in there so bad.
So here, this illustrates how this block is removable.
Okay.
Because these blocks here are supported on the left and right. So you can push this block out and the wall won't collapse.
Ah, I see that. Yeah. Which was obviously on purpose.
Right. And then, so I think here's where we see the shafts. So the shafts make a jog to avoid the noble circuit. So rather than coming straight out, it makes this turn right here. Several turns. And this is because there's the noble circuit in the way, and they had to avoid it. Now, curiously, in the rover videos, when the robots, they went up through these shafts, there looks like a connecting port between the noble circuit and the shaft. It's one of the most amazing things I had ever seen. I think I have a still photograph of it in here somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'll stop.
Wow.
So right here, this is from the rovers that went up through the shafts, and you can clearly see right here there's another connecting shaft.
Yeah.
and this could go and intersect with the noble circuit for whatever reason, but it's perfectly aligned where the noble circuit would be. And curiously enough, there was so much debris up in here, and they even found like old papyri up in here in the shafts. These were rods that were shoved up through there by these, I think they were like evangelical Christian archaeologists way back in the day who were probing the shafts. They were looking for evidence of Jesus somehow.
What?
Yeah, wild story. So they shoved these rods up in there.
Wow.
And that's how I think the Dixon relics were found.
What was something written on the papyri?
I have to go back and look. I don't know if it was unlegible, but there was definitely something. Matt has a better video on it than me. I wasn't more interested in the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
But that's where the Dixon relics, they came tumbling out of there when they shoved these rods up in there.
That's kind of hilarious. I'm going to look into that later. Yeah. So no sonic levitation or
no.
What else we got? Hold on. I made a list. Hold on. Yeah, sonic levitation, ancient aliens, geopolymer, concrete.
Oh my
God. Vibrational abrasive tech beyond known methods.
Yeah, no.
I mean, what I only hear passively through my friends about the quote geopolymer guys, but supposedly those guys can be pretty aggressive.
I would like to have a steel cage death match with any one of those people. Yeah. That's how mad they make me.
Do you think they're like some kind of troll group? I really think maybe they're a troll group. Like, because why are they so aggressive?
I don't know. Like anything else, I don't think there's a simple answer. I think there's true believers. I also think there's, and I hate this term. There's grifters.
Yeah, there is.
And I don't know. I put them right up there with flat earthers. Quite frankly, and it's almost like a cult.
Yeah, because like it's not like there's a sonic levitation cult that's like hating on everyone online about with different opinion who you know what I mean? Like there's people who like talk about like in the Ancient Aliens game, like you can like you can like kidnap ancient Egyptians, take them up to your ship, genetically alter them, give them the ability to do sonic levitation, and then build your pyramid faster. But like, like there's no, it's people aren't that mad about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think part of it is so they make these stones. They're basically the size of the palm of your hand.
I don't even know exactly what they're. Yeah,
they do the some of them do the chemistry and they make these reconstituted stone. Okay, we can do all kinds of things today. That doesn't mean they could do it then. And this is where I don't understand the disconnect. I mean, we have all the technology that we have today, and we have all the same materials. So that doesn't mean that they necessarily did that.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many ways to poke holes in it, but I think the number one thing I always go back to is we know where all the quarries are. Okay,
right.
All the quarries are known, and there's also a science that they can tell where a rock came from, what quarry it came from by the inclusions and the things that are inside of that. The chemistry.
Yeah.
The chemistry of the rock can be analyzed, and it can be traced back to a quarry. And every ancient site has quarries associated with it.
Even like Sacsayhuaman and stuff like that, they don't really know how they did it. I was wanting to ask you about that one as well, but like they know where the rock came from. So it does seem like a flat earth thing, doesn't it? I just don't know why they're so mad about it.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Sacsayhuaman because I do have a I do have a bone to pick with where they say those quarries are. And
Okay.
so the quarries that they say for Sacsayhuaman are several miles away, right? And we look at the size of the stones and the Cyclopean wall,
Mm-hmm.
and we can't envision them moving that far. And maybe they could, maybe they couldn't. But the Insida project did a paper on this. I think it's called "The Question of the Walls at Sacsayhuaman," and in that they present some chemistry work that was done by a Russian group, and the walls of the fortress are made out of limestone primarily, and the chemistry of the walls is such that there are no organic inclusions in the walls at Sacsayhuaman. But the quarry itself, although the base chemistry is the same, it's the same limestone from the same region, the quarries have these organic inclusions in them. So, as rocks form over millions of years, they trap organic matter inside of them and then they become sealed. And the biggest difference, even though the chemistry itself matches, is that the wall blocks don't have these organic inclusions and the quarry does. Now, this is part of where the geopolymer crowd's argument is that they were cast, and the casting process is what eliminated the organic material. But I have an entirely different view on that. So right across from the wall, across from the esplanade, is the throne of the Inca, which is on top of this massive extrusion of rock. And all around it are what they call these rock gardens. There are these limestone gardens of almost looks like molten limestone. Now, one of the things about limestone is it's very susceptible to rain. It can erode with rain over hundreds of thousands of years very easily. But at the same time, these limestone gardens, they have a lot of fingerprints of quarrying being applied to them. There's a lot of cubular cutouts and extrusions made from these rock gardens. Through interpreting the Insida Project's paper a little differently, that extrusion was part of a massive geological event that happened millions of years ago. That area has a lot of magma, deep below the surface, and sometimes it makes its way to the surface through tectonic plate movements and things like that. So my conjecture is that that entire area, the limestone bedrock, was extruded during one of these tectonic magma events, and it melted the limestone bedrock as such that it incinerated all of the organic inclusions, and then it spilled out these limestone deposits all around where the fortress and the wall is, just across from it. So my take is that the blocks that entire area is a massive quarry. And the blocks were quarried virtually on site to build the wall.
Interesting. They did pull shit off the mountain though, right behind there too, right? There's a quarry there.
The quarry is so on the back side of the fortress is like a cliff. It
right.
Drops down.
I've seen it, but don't they say that's where there's a quarry right there on the cliff?
I think that the quarry that I'm aware of that they say built the wall is on the other side of the esplanade in the other direction.
Okay.
To the best of my knowledge. Now, again,
you're probably right.
I could be wrong. I want us to say as a caveat, most people study a specific site or a specific thing their entire life, and that's all they focus on. I'm a layman who travels the globe and looks at everything. So, if there is a quarry on the other side of that mountain, I had not come across that yet. As far as I know, the quarry is on the other side of the esplanade a few miles, several miles away.
Got it. Yeah, and I hadn't heard that take. And recently, why can't I think of his name? Project Unity. There, what's his name?
Oh yeah.
Anyway, he was climbing around down there. Did you know that there was tunnels and stuff under the
So
wall?
the tunnel thing has been around for a while.
I didn't. That was my first I heard of it.
Well, they knew that it's been in the folklore, the missionaries and all the people that came. You know, the locals talked about tunnels for as long as people have been there. But they've just recently started doing some excavation. I don't know what came of it. There was a lot of build up for it. They showed a lot of test pits. I haven't really seen any follow up.
No, me neither.
As of yet, and I know they started shortly after they began. They started asking for public funding, which rose my antenna up a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard ask. Yeah. This site is always, it's one of those ones, like if you just Googled what are the top 10 smoking guns of a lost ancient civilization, they would come up. And so, the site never really makes much sense to me. Like as a, like, what the hell is it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what was its function? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they call it a fortress. You know, here's one of the things that is tricky, because a lot of what comes from there is from the Spanish missionaries, right? And this has become, in my perspective, and a lot of people don't talk about this, a double-edged sword. So on one hand, you have the negative colonizer missionary thing where, you know, these people are bad and you can't listen to them, and everything that they said is BS, and you need to listen to the people who were there and this and that. But at the same time, these chroniclers were taking the people's testimony and writing it down. So on one hand, they say, well, they weren't writing it down accurately, or they were falsifying what they were writing down. Yet on the other hand, I've seen the chroniclers' logs or testimony now being used to prove how the wall was made.
Right.
So I don't know how you can have it both ways.
You can't. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think one comes from like a social anthropological perspective, and then the other one comes from an archaeological perspective, and they're kind of adjacent fields, but like I just watched this one today. I won't even say which channel, but it was like about you know, the conquistadors and all that stuff, and it was just like piling it on, you know what I mean? And I mean, they were shitty in a lot of ways, but you're right. You can't really throw out everything they said, but you do have to take it with a little bit of grain of salt, right?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to lean more heavily on, I do believe what they wrote, right? And I think a lot of the negativity is political ideology. That's built. I'm not saying they're good people or they were bad people.
Right.
I'm not championing one side or the other, but I am saying I at least take what the chroniclers wrote as being factual. I don't know what reason they have to lie. If they went in there and they wrote down, we made all of this, it was us. So, okay, well, then you're obviously lying, right? But they don't say that. They say this is what the locals say and this and that. That whole area is like the apex of the geopolymer.
So throw in the human aspect for a second, and like, so for example, like, I'm just making shit up here, but let's pretend that 80% of government like politicians are honest and 20% aren't, right? Just as an example, like, just because we know how humans are, right? Some of what the chroniclers said could have been like corrupt, like, they were trying to, like, you're trying to convince the king or some other rich people back in Spain to give you some shit, so you say it's a certain way or whatever. There's got to be some of that.
Well, I guess, and if someone could show me a passage that lends to that way of
Yeah.
thinking, I wouldn't push back on it. But what I'm talking about is they said, like the king ordered 20,000 local men
Mm-hmm.
to come and move the stones, and they worked in 5,000 group teams to move them. And okay, you're talking about pragmatic things here.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're attributing it to the local people. So where is there a nefariousness to that? I really don't know. But if they were saying, like, disparaging remarks about the natives, or if they were saying, oh, the natives told us that there's this lost vast amounts of treasure or whatever, to entice more colonialists to show up, okay, then I can see, like, you're spinning a yarn to
Yeah, that's kind
get
of what I
more
was getting at.
funding or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. That's what they were saying in that what I was watching earlier today. But I would just imagine, like, not like just because sometimes humans are full of shit, that, like, that's a possibility. But yeah, I think for the most part, I feel like you could take their word for it. They were pretty they wrote down everything, right? Like the whole voyage and
Yeah,
everything
they
like
talk
that.
about the tunnels. They talk about how the walls were. I'm just talking about, like, the brass tack stuff. I think, like,
Yeah.
it's not like I read every single thing that they said, but when I'm doing research, I'm pinpointing what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, in your opinion, uh, do you look into Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, or Younger Dryas airburst, or Younger Dryas solar outburst hypothesis? And in your view, based on how you view, like, what was going on in the past around that time, what if what kind of civilization, like, we're talking about a civilization possibly around the Testepler region and other places on the planet, and you that would still reset a civilization in the same way that they suggest, right? I mean, uh they would have to start over. And do you think that was, like, intentional? They're building and stuff like that to
Well, I could
last, and
definitely look
intentional
at
burying and stuff like that.
I could look at Toss Tepler as a start of something. Was it a restart? I mean, I do get into the speculative realm, and I have written articles and ex posts in the speculative realm where I allow my mind to open up to other possibilities. I will always say that this is uh, an exercise, right?
Mm-hmm.
I won't say that this is what I believe, but I allow myself to entertain these things as an exercise.
Mm.
So, as an exercise, um, there is a thread of interpretation of looking at Toss Tepler as a start or restart of something.
Yeah.
You can feel that it's almost intuitive, right? But there's nothing there to prove it,
Right.
right? So you can say that, yes, this was a band of people from somewhere where it got destroyed, and they were doing their best to restart something. I can entertain that as a thought experiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wish people maybe would look at it more like that. This is a thought experiment. This is. I even wrote a thought experiment along the biblical lines, that these were the descendants of Noah, and they had gotten off the ark, and this is why there's all these animal motifs, and this is why you see that emaciated man holding his phallus, because they emphasized reproduction. Without reproduction, it was the death of humanity. So that
Mm-hmm.
emaciated statue holding his phallus represented the desperate need to restart humanity, right? These are all those, like, um, what I would say, more of a esoteric or a thought experiment type thing.
Yeah, I like the term thought experiment. I don't know if like the thing is I think I think ego plays a role in that. Like for example, like it's just an indulgent for me. Like a you can call it a thought experiment. It's me using my imagination, thinking, "Whoa!" Like think about what if that was real, right? But I
Well,
don't get all
I
butthurt.
do the
I don't
whole
get
thing
all
on it with
butthurt about it.
passages. I'm sorry, I'm talking
I was
over
just
you.
gonna say, I don't get all butthurt about it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not like I don't emotionally identify or personally identify as somebody who like this is what I believe and like you know what I mean. Like, but as you can see, it's all over my wall. I got all the books and stuff. So I really do. I got a Stonehenge thing on right now. I really do think that some people like just grab something and go and identify as it, and that's their problem, you know. Um, and sometimes I wonder, you're on X more than me. Like you've got like how many 17, 18? I've got like
Almost 19. I
1,000 on
lost some.
there.
I was up over 19, but I lost some recently from a purge or something. But yeah.
I don't even have 1,000, I don't think, but it's because I don't go on there all that much. But I I sometimes I wonder if like the fighting is like, you know, 5% of people. And most people, archaeology or alt or in between, are rather cordial about it. Am I crazy? Maybe I'm too nice.
Yeah, I think it's more contentious than you think.
Yeah.
And I again, I think I said earlier on, I didn't realize it was going to be like this. I didn't realize it was so contentious. People get dug in with their beliefs, I think, is what you were trying to say just a minute ago.
Yes.
And they can get very passionate to the point of angry about it.
Yes.
Um, the whole Atlantis thing. I entertain Atlantis in a very loose and cursory way. It honestly, it means literally nothing to me. I could care less about Atlantis, but I can entertain it for fun or just again as something to expand your mind for a little bit. But it has, according to a lot of people, it's tied to racism, and then according to other people, it's tied to the aliens, and there's all this stuff wrapped into it that people are so passionate about. I almost just kind of laugh at it. I like Randall Carlson's take that if there was Atlantis, if you follow the dialogues,
Ugh.
it all points to the Azores, and in my opinion, that's the best take going. But I could kill less if it's not. It doesn't really matter to
Right.
me. And I have one
Yeah.
guy who's constantly like, uh, Atlantis was ancient Egypt. Atlantis was ancient Egypt, and I'm just
I
like,
know the guy you're talking about.
I don't want
What's
to
his
like
name?
be
What's his channel?
off the top of my head. I can't recall.
I
He's
can't.
been
I know he
just
was
thought
been
of the
on
name.
my show. Yeah, I honestly had to block that guy, so I don't even want to
Yeah,
publicize him.
it's like
But
he
he
can be
was being a
friendly, and
total
then he
dick.
gets mad.
He's mad, then he's nice, then he's mad, then he's nice.
Yeah,
But people, he identifies with this, and this is something that he's probably gonna watch this, like literally, like he
probably.
was, and I think he's a nice person. But then when it comes to this stuff, it's like a- aggressive and
Yeah,
vitriolic, and we've all got caught in like an X conversation or two where we're like, well, I'll tell you, right? But
100%.
at the same time, like I do agree that the more you do it, as longer you get older and you start thinking, this isn't the right way, like to have this conversation at all. Like I'm 43. I'm not that old, but I'm like in the middle. I'm like on the back nine, you could say. And I just got onto the 10th hole. But I I'm more of that mindset. Like now, it should be fun. Mysteries are fun. History is fun. asking these questions and having these conversations and watching other people have these conversations is fun. But there's nothing fun about, like, you never feel good after spending like 3 hours arguing with somebody on Twitter or something, right?
Yeah.
That's not fun.
Yeah, I'm not perfect. I've had my moments,
Me too.
but I always try to rein myself back in each time and keep it to a minimum. I will say that, whoever responds to me in an inquisitive and cordial way,
Yeah.
and I remain. But when people attack me, I can, come back at them pretty hard.
Yeah, I've done it too. We all do it, right? But like, I'm just saying, it's like it's not the answer. You said that at the beginning too. It's like you made this sort of transition from like being aggressive about it to like, this isn't the way to talk about it. But some people just some people just need to need to be told about themselves. We'll just say that, because there's no need to be a dick about it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I sometimes, I want it to be, like you said, fun, inquisitive, congenial. If I put something out there that you don't agree with, you can say there's ways to disagree with that aren't, dripping with animosity and
Yeah.
sarcasm or just outright vitriol or whatever. And so, people can question me if it's an honest question and say, well, I don't agree with that. This is what I think. Okay. But if it's like, oh, yeah, you're just a fucking blah, 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 blah. And it's like, dude, but I do my best to try to keep it cordial. I'm not perfect. I'm a human. I have my moments, not that long ago, John Hoops called me a racist on the archaeological wall of shame. And
That means you win, dude. That means you won.
I made a 15-minute video where I went off on him because
Good, but
I just was not gonna have that, and I just basically, it wasn't like me groveling. It was me going, you people are out of your minds,
in this stage in the game, if you don't recognize that that's like a total weak loser move to do, that nobody's buying right now, then like you're part of the problem, in my opinion. Some guy that used to come on my show all the time that you probably know of tried that on me too, and I just I had this whole thing typed out, Eric. Like it took me like 45 minutes, and then I was like, delete, and then I just ignored it, and the thing got like 10 views, and I was like, okay, good. But I've been there, man, and that's just like one of the weakest moves ever. That's why I said you win, because once they go there or somewhere in that area where it's like they're attacking you as a person or they're trying to cancel you or something like that, that's like you know if you don't know that that's really 2017 stuff. Like people aren't falling for that stupid shit anymore. You can't just do that with everything, like
yeah. I wasn't afraid of being canceled. This was more of like just a F you right back to you. Like,
good.
you tried the wrong person.
Yeah.
Move along.
Yeah. And I think people like that deserve that.
Yeah,
In
they
a
do.
way.
More people need to do it. I
Yeah.
didn't sit there like, oh, well, let me prove to you. No, I was like, F you. You're out to lunch.
Yeah, and well, because what they want you to do is apologize or something, or
Yeah,
try to
exactly.
explain yourself,
Right.
or whatever, and that then they
And
win.
they
Then
win.
then they win, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
So, looking ahead into the future, Eric, what kind of like things are you thinking about looking into? Any unanswered questions? Anything that you're looking forward to research coming out? Anything like that that you're working on? You want to tell us about?
Well, I obviously, like we talked about before, I'm very excited about this project looking into the big void.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's a lot more stuff coming out of South America that is going to be unfolding as the years come up.
Hmm.
One of the things I didn't talk about is I was able to come across a massive LiDAR scan of a region that is covered with about 10,000 ancient Mayan ruins.
Jeez.
And you can't even like throw a stone without seeing a Mayan ruin. I would like to maybe see what I can do with that more. It's all covered by the jungle canopy in Guatemala.
So exciting.
You know, I take where the story goes. I think what I'm going to start doing now is do more of my presentations on how I think things were made. I just did one on how a sarcophagus was made, how to make a sarcophagus. One of the things I want to mention before we go is the tools, right? I want to say for this pod or stream or whatever you want to call it, the ancient Egyptians did not use copper tools to cut stone. Okay, everyone? Stop saying that. Okay? They used flint. They used flint chisels. They used.
Why do people say that?
Because it's this red herring to make a mockery of Egyptologists and to keep the we don't know anything, we don't know how it was made. This is all unknowable mystery going.
Right.
Okay, and how do we know this? Because they found the flint chisel shards in what are the remnants of a manufacturing location where they were making the flint chisels. And it's been replicated by sculptors and other people in real world experiments where they use flint chisels to chisel away granite. Also, they used brass. So they used hammered brass and not even copper for the things that they did use supposedly copper on. So you got to dig a little deeper into what they actually used and stop bringing out sort of these red herrings to use as mockery.
Yeah, it's almost like some people I'm sure use it as mockery. I just thought that's what they used. I don't know why, just because maybe I heard it so many different times. Yeah, that's interesting. So you made a whole video about a recent video about how they made sarcophagi using flint?
No, so it's a multifaceted process. And if you ever want to do another stream on stone masonry, we really didn't get into that. I've studied stone masonry extensively. A lot of what happens is if you show someone one method, they extrapolate it for everything. That's just not how things go. That's not how anything goes. That's not how you make anything. You don't build a house with one hammer, right? You use a table saw, you use a hammer, you use planers, you use all types of tools, right? So the video that I just did recently on how a sarcophagus is made is step by step. It shows the extraction of the granite from the quarry all the way to the finished product, step by step how it was done. So if anyone wants to check that out, they can look at it. But I'm going to do more of these types of videos explaining how things were manufactured, where I can get my arms around it.
I'm gonna go watch that right now. I didn't even know you did that. I didn't even see that one yet. I'm gonna go watch that one. We need more of that stuff as well as a counterbalance to all the like lost ancient, because this is like a broad, easy, safe answer, but I think that the truth is kind of somewhere in the middle, you know?
Yeah. So like, for example, flint was used on hard stones, like the granite, the road granite. They would use flint on granite. If it was limestone, they would use hammered brass, you know, to separate the blocks, things like that. So the diorite balls, and I've found in an old publication a diorite hammerstone, which looked like a giant two-fisted hammer that you could use to pound the stone with. In an old 1913 publication, they described using fire and water to quote unquote rot the stone. And this was replicated in the field. This was determined through the archaeological findings of burnt charcoal and mud bricks at the quarry of Aswan. So I mentioned this in another stream I did a long time ago with Ricardo. Basically, they would set fires on top of the granite to reach high temperatures like 800 degrees Celsius, and Celsius or Fahrenheit, I don't know, but high temperatures, and then they would immediately quench it with water. So the rock would expand and then contract at a rapid pace. And what this does is it manipulates the granite to be more brittle. And then they would come in with the hammer stones and then remove the granite much easier. It would break away. One of the things I wanted to talk about is the Mohs scale of hardness gets talked about. That is the complete misunderstanding of how things are rated. The Mohs scale of hardness gets talked about a lot by Uncharted X for there's no way they could cut this because of the Mohs scale and this and that. The
It gets used a lot by a lot of people. I hear it all the time.
The Mohs scale of hardness is a method of determining how easy something is that can be scratched. So when it comes to rating how a stone can be cut, it's a totally different metric. So it's called fracture toughness, and this is measured in megapascals. So that is what is a true metric of how a stone can be cut. So fracture toughness is where a stone will crack when it's struck along natural fissures in the stone more easily. So, for example, glass has a Mohs scale of 6, 5.5 to 6. So obviously you can smash glass, right?
Right.
So, and granite has a Mohs scale of 6 or 7, and flint has a Mohs scale of 7. So these Mohs scales are all very similar, and they're all different materials. And obviously, you can, in your mind, understand how you could smash glass really easily.
Damn it, Eric! You're killing my dreams here, man.
Well, that's part of the engineering background that I wanted to get out there because
that's an important one. Those two things, the copper chisels and the Mohs scale thing, people should know that.
They should.
So I'm gonna make a clip of that and put it right here, or put it on X. So what is that a red herring too? Like, why? No, that'd be something different. But like, why do people use that? Why is that? Who started doing that first?
I think it's a cursory knowledge of the subject.
Okay.
And then it's used to, much like I said, as a forensic investigator, right? You look at the evidence and then you follow the evidence to the conclusion, right? That's a proper investigation. A poor investigation is determining an outcome and then finding evidence to fit your outcome before you know the facts, right?
Yeah.
So when you're using the Mohs scale is you have determined in your mind what you think it should be. Now you're looking for evidence to back that up rather than following the actual evidence to the real conclusion.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're into law or anything like that, it's the same thing with investigations in general. You work backwards, right?
You should. You don't want to show up at the scene and say, well, I think you did it. And then go out and find the evidence to prove that you're right.
I think it was an ancient lost civilization, and I'm going to go find evidence that I was right.
Exactly.
Yeah, there is still a lot of mysteries. Like, what do you say about, I mean, we could do this all night, obviously, but like global flood myths, 500 plus global flood myths and stuff like that.
So there's absolutely lots of mysteries, and there's nothing that I've said that solves like much. Like, these are minor pieces of the puzzle that help you understand some parts of the equation. There are tremendous amounts of mysteries. As far as the global flood thing goes, I'm told that I've seen both sides. There's no global flood myth, yet every society has a myth of floods. And then so they say, like, well, all these are local tales of local floods and everywhere floods. So then they've amalgamated together to be a global flood.
Making too much sense, man. You're making too much sense. Yeah, what's one of my biggest takeaways from today was the I'm trying to think of how you said it, but the independent evolution of the human mind could replace like cultural diffusion over vast periods of time and vast periods of space. I feel like you could apply that definitely to construction, things like that. I really have to think more on that, but that's a really interesting interesting idea, because we are like genetically programmed to like do certain shit, recognize certain patterns, like chase dopamine and things like that. Like, and so I feel like even like civilizations. So I saw this I forget the guy's name, but it was on Lex Friedman like literally the other day. And they were in the rainforest with these like uncontacted did you see this?
No, but I did. It came across my radar the other day, and uncontacted tribes is one of my little niche topics that I put out there, and I use it to actually bolster the lost civilization idea.
Okay.
Because what the mainstream will try to say is, everything's been a linear projection, and there's no way that an advanced society could exist because all we have is evidence for all of this primitive stuff. To your point about the gentleman who was on the Lex Friedman podcast there, about the uncontacted indigenous tribes. That's actually a niche topic of mine that I've covered sporadically over the years. I'm fascinated by it.
Me too, man.
One of the things I'm fascinated by it is they actually have ancient tools. Like they have ads and stuff that they're carrying around. They have these stuff that we are finding, in like an archaeological sense, they're walking around with still today. It's remarkable. And I use that to bolster the actual ancient lost civilization idea. And the reason why I do that is the mainstream archaeological community will say, where is it? Where is this ancient lost civilization? We're looking for it. We're looking for it. All we find is this primitive stuff. We find this primitive stuff. We find stone tools. We find, basically simple things in the historical record. We don't find anything advanced. There's nothing that sticks out, right? And sometimes I get a little dismayed with that as well, because I'm looking for something that's really going to wow me, right? But at the same time, that argument can be turned on its head. Right now, we're going to be going to the moon. We're going to be going to the moon in a couple of weeks. And while we're going to the moon, there are people that are still living in the Stone Age in parts of the world right now, today. So we, on a flip side of there being a lost ancient civilization, ancient advanced civilization amongst the globe, which was primitive, is now in the inverse. We have a massive advanced global civilization with small pockets of people who are still living as if they were in the Stone Age. So both can be true. Both can be true. You can flip this around on its head.
Yeah, you're right. Both can be true and have been true since our, since
like, why don't these people know about spaceships? Like, what's their problem?
this is wild. This is never before seen stuff. I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I just wanted to show you quick, since it's a niche subject. You got to check this whole video out. Just to even the whole conversation's great, but just this clip.
I've seen these videos before. These aren't new. This guy kind of pissed me off.
No, this one is new. This one is
That one
new.
particular one?
Yeah, this one is new 6 days ago.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but yeah, it blows me away, but at the same time makes a lot of sense. That you know, just different levels of civils, even on today's like crazy technological planet that we think we're on. There's people living in the stone. Those people are barely in the stone. I don't even think they're in the Stone Age. Those people, um, which is wild.
Yeah, I don't know if can find the video I have. Uh, yeah, so I got. That's why I thought this was this video. Um,
Let's see.
see if it's
My
sharing.
mind's a weird shape. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I've
So,
seen this one. Yeah, I've seen this one. Um,
and then I
yeah.
have a longer one. Mark Detroit. This is the craziest one.
And this bolsters, like, I know you explained it, but could you reiterate how this bolsters the idea that like we don't need an ancient lost civilization?
No, it's not that we don't need one. It's that the dichotomy of the fact that we live in this advanced world, and
Hmm.
here we still have pockets of primitive people.
Yeah.
Why haven't they advanced?
Hmm.
Right? So, on the inverse, we could have way back in deep history, most of the globe was like this, but small
Yeah.
pockets were advanced,
Yes.
right?
Okay. Yeah, that
The
makes a
other
lot of
way
sense.
around.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And there's a lot of like, I don't know, controversy on how to handle those situations and stuff. That guy was talking about how they bought a bunch of land and they're trying to protect those people or something, but I don't know the whole story. Um, but
Yeah, there's that island,
yeah, North Sentinel Island.
or
Yeah.
Sentinel Island, and all these places.
So what I liked about, you know, talking to you is like I'm really like throwing out all the the catchy, this is why this why you have to have an ancient lost civilization. And the reality is my truth is I really don't know. I'm open to both possibilities. I'm open to your explanation and that Jean Pierre Houdin's explanation of the building of the pyramid. I don't it I don't have the hubris to like say that I know. But having these conversations and having people like you who don't just believe like everything they hear on Ancient Aliens, or it is good. And I honestly like would like to talk to a lot more archaeologists, but unfortunately I think I've been put into the alt category, and that was never my intention. I love archaeology, and I love anthropology, and I love history, and I'm not like a crazy ancient lost history gonna argue with you on X kind of guy. So I appreciate having you on the show tonight, man. And I was wondering if before we go, you mentioned the vases. I don't know if you can quickly explain how
Oh,
you think.
Jesus.
Yeah, we can not do those today. We can do those another day.
Um,
'Cause I feel like we
it,
can have
it,
other conversations.
yeah, the thing about the vases is I've grown tired of the vases.
No worries.
Um, you know, I made a design of an ancient lathe on how the vases could have been made with the materials that they had at hand and with the tools that they had at hand. Um, it was a goal in mind to try to get people involved to replicate it with me. So, like some carpenters and some stonemasons and things like that. It never really came about. But essentially, I believe that it was made on some type of lathe, a manual powered lathe. And now I get screamed at because Ben
Uh,
from Unfiltered X has put out all these videos about how precise they are and the measurements and all that. And I got this new guy. He's kind of tagging me quite a bit. He actually has a metrology set up in his home, and he's been scanning vases and pumping in all the data and trying to figure out whether there's forgeries or what is real and what is not, what's modern, and the provenance and all that. And as an engineer, I listen to a lot of the numbers that Ben put out, and I'm not as blown away by them as some people are. And then some people take it a whole nother level, and they start spewing out numbers that are totally not even what Ben said. They start talking about microns. And I was like, do you don't even know what a micron is? A micron is like 0.000000008 of an inch, you know, and what Ben is actually talking about is like 3/1000 of an inch. 3/1000 of an inch is, you know, maybe to a layman sounds incredible. It is amazing that they could achieve 3/1000 of an inch. It's really plus or minus 3/1000 of an inch, so it's really 6/1000 of an inch. But people are trying to imbue upon it more than what's there to prove some type of lost technology. Here's the thing, though: if they had this lathe, that would be thousands of years before the lathe was invented. So when people talk about lost advanced technology, they really need to settle down and humble themselves to think about what that really means. So, for example, in my sarcophagus video, I believe that they used what's called the 3-plate method to create the ultra high tolerance flat surfaces. If that's the case, that's advanced technology.
Sure.
Because the 3-plate method wasn't invented until modern times. So if they were doing the 3-plate method 3000 BCE, that is remarkable, and that is quote unquote advanced technology. Technology today is too much attributed with computers and electricity. People need to get out of their heads. They did not have computers. They did not have electricity. Stop. But what they did have was advanced techniques of manufacturing that we didn't invent until quote unquote the modern times. So a lathe would be a millennia before we thought the lathe was invented. The 3-plate method would be more than 3 millennia before the 3-plate method was invented. So this is what I find is advanced. So when people talk about a quote unquote lost advanced civilization, the ancient Egyptian civilization lasted 3,000 years. They were superiorly advanced. There's no question about it.
Sure.
And what they made and what they produced was advanced, but the techniques that they used didn't involve power saws.
Yeah. Even the ramp system you showed me is pretty friggin' advanced technology. You know, pretty, yeah. Cool, man. I think we should wrap it up here. My back's starting to hurt. This is my second one today, but I hope this is the first of at least a couple more. I really enjoyed our conversation. I think we can have more conversations. Where can everyone find you, Eric?
So you can find me. My personal account is at Ancient Epoch on X, and then they can find me my website ancienthistoryx.com, and then at Ancient Hist X on X is our X channel for the website, where we publish articles from the website to X. And then on YouTube, I'm at Ancient History -X.
Got it. I'll put all those in the description below. And thank you so much for joining the Multiverse, Eric of Ancient Epoch.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. And yes, there are a lot more topics we could cover in the future. I'm open to it.
Very cool, man. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Good night.
Subscribe to Dave's Multiverse on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble today.